The morning sun cast long shadows across the military checkpoint as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos approached the gate, her service weapon holstered at her side and her discharge papers folded neatly in her breast pocket. After 12 years of exemplary service, today marked the end of her military career, or so she thought. What she didn't know was that in less than an hour, a single glance at a small metal badge on her uniform would change everything, turning what should have been a routine departure into a moment that would redefine the meaning of recognition and respect. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maria had always been different from her peers, though not in ways that were immediately obvious. Standing at 5 feet 4 inches with an unassuming presence, she didn't fit the stereotypical image of what people expected from someone with her particular skill set. Her dark hair was pulled back in regulation style, her uniform pressed to perfection, and her boots polished to a mirror shine. But it was the small, distinctive badge pinned above her left breast pocket that told the real story, a story that most people, even within the military, didn't fully understand. The expert marksman badge wasn't just another piece of military insignia. It represented years of dedication, countless hours on shooting ranges, and a level of precision that fewer than 2% of military personnel ever achieved. Maria had earned hers during her 3rd year of service when she consistently scored perfect marks on qualifications that left seasoned veterans scratching their heads in amazement. Her instructors had initially been skeptical. How could someone so quiet and unassuming possess such extraordinary talent with a rifle? The answer lay in Maria's childhood. Growing up on her grandfather's ranch in rural Texas, every morning before school, she would help him with chores, and every evening, he would teach her to shoot tin cans off fence posts with an old .22 rifle. "Shooting isn't about strength, Mia," he would tell her in his weathered voice. "It's about patience, breathing, and understanding that the rifle is just an extension of yourself." Her grandfather had been a sniper in Vietnam, though he rarely spoke about those days. What he did pass on was his knowledge, his technique, and most importantly, his respect for the responsibility that came with being able to place a bullet exactly where you intended. By the time Maria enlisted at 18, she could consistently hit targets at distances that impressed even the drill sergeants. But military marksmanship was different from shooting tin cans. It required adapting to different weapons, different conditions, and different pressures. The transition challenged her in ways she hadn't expected, pushing her to refine skills she thought she had already mastered. Her first qualification test had been a disaster. Nervous energy, unfamiliar equipment, and the pressure of proving herself in a male-dominated environment had caused her hands to shake and her breathing to become erratic. She scored barely above the minimum passing grade, earning nothing but disappointed looks from her instructors and smirks from some of her fellow recruits. That night, alone in her bunk, she made a promise to herself that she would never perform below her capabilities again. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Maria spent every available minute on the range, sometimes arriving before dawn and staying until the sun set. She studied ballistics manuals, practiced breathing techniques, and analyzed every aspect of her shooting form. Her grandfather's lessons became the foundation, but she built upon them with military precision and scientific methodology. She learned to calculate wind speed by watching grass movement, to adjust for temperature variations, and to remain steady even when her heart was racing from physical exertion. It was during her second qualification test that people began to take notice. Not only did she pass with flying colors, but she achieved a perfect score, something that hadn't been accomplished by anyone in her training company for over 2 years. The range instructor, a gruff sergeant with 23 years of service, walked over to examine her target paper with disbelief. Every shot had been placed within the center ring, creating a tight cluster that could be covered by a quarter. "Santos," he had called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Either you got lucky, or you've been holding out on us." The challenge in his voice was unmistakable, and Maria knew that this was her moment to prove that it hadn't been luck at all. Her response was simple and direct. "Sergeant, I'm ready to demonstrate again whenever you'd like." The confidence in her voice surprised even her, but it came from a place of absolute certainty in her abilities. She had spent months preparing for this moment, and she wasn't about to let doubt creep in now. The impromptu demonstration that followed became legendary within her unit. Using a rifle she had never fired before, from a position she hadn't practiced, Maria proceeded to place 10 consecutive shots into a target at 300 yards, creating a group so tight that the holes overlapped. The silence that followed was broken only by the wind across the range and the soft whistle of appreciation from the sergeant. Word of her performance spread quickly through the base, and soon Maria found herself being recruited for specialized training programs and advanced marksmanship courses. Each new challenge only served to highlight her exceptional abilities, and her reputation grew with every perfect score and flawless demonstration. The expert marksman badge ceremony had been one of the proudest moments of Maria's life. Standing at attention while the base commander pinned the distinctive badge to her uniform, she felt the weight of achievement and responsibility settling on her shoulders. The badge itself was small, a silver target with crossed rifles, surrounded by a wreath, but what it represented was enormous. It marked her as being among the elite few who had demonstrated not just exceptional skill, but consistency, adaptability, and the mental fortitude required to perform under pressure. But with recognition came new responsibilities and challenges that Maria hadn't anticipated. As word of her marksmanship skills spread throughout the base and beyond, she found herself being called upon for increasingly specialized assignments. Her first deployment took her to Afghanistan, where her skills would be tested not on controlled ranges with paper targets, but in real-world situations where lives hung in the balance. The mountainous terrain of Afghanistan presented challenges unlike anything she had trained for. Altitude affected bullet trajectory. Extreme temperature variations required constant recalibration, and the psychological pressure of knowing that her shots could mean the difference between life and death for her fellow soldiers was overwhelming. During her first week in country, Maria questioned whether her range excellence would translate to combat effectiveness. Her doubts were put to rest during a mission to provide overwatch for a convoy traveling through a particularly dangerous valley. Intelligence reports had indicated a high probability of ambush, and Maria was positioned on a ridgeline nearly 800 yards from the road. For 3 hours, she lay motionless behind her rifle, scanning the terrain through her scope, her grandfather's voice echoing in her mind. "Patience, Mia. The shot will come when it needs to come." When the attack began, it was swift and coordinated. Insurgents opened fire from multiple concealed positions, using the terrain to their advantage while remaining largely invisible to the convoy's return. Fire. Through her scope, Maria could see muzzle flashes and movement that were imperceptible to the naked eye. Her first shot neutralized a sniper who had been targeting the convoy commander's vehicle. Her second eliminated an insurgent operating a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. Each shot was deliberate, calculated, and precisely placed. The engagement lasted less than 10 minutes, but in that time, Maria fired 7 rounds and achieved 7 confirmed eliminations. More importantly, her intervention had prevented what intelligence later determined would have been a devastating ambush that could have resulted in multiple coalition casualties. The convoy commander's after-action report specifically cited Maria's performance as being instrumental in the mission's success. That report made its way up the chain of command, eventually reaching the desk of Brigadier General Robert Harrison, a career infantry officer with over 30 years of service. Harrison had seen thousands of after-action reports throughout his career, but something about this one caught his attention. The precision described, the decisive impact of individual marksmanship on a tactical situation, and the cool professionalism under fire reminded him of the legendary snipers he had served with during his own combat deployments. General Harrison made a note in Maria's file and ensured that she received proper recognition for her actions. More importantly, he began tracking her career, watching as she continued to excel in assignment after assignment. Her second deployment saw her training Afghan National Army marksmen, passing on not just technical skills but the mental discipline and professional standards that had made her so. During her third deployment, Maria was assigned to a Special Operations Task Force conducting high-value target operations. The precision required for these missions was beyond anything she had previously experienced. Often operating in urban environments where civilian casualties were not just unacceptable, but could have strategic implications, Maria had to demonstrate not just accuracy, but perfect judgment under extreme stress. It was during one of these operations that Maria faced her greatest challenge and achieved what many would consider her finest moment as a marksman. The target was a high-ranking insurgent commander who had been responsible for numerous attacks on coalition forces. Intelligence had located him at a compound in the middle of a densely populated area, and traditional assault methods were deemed too risky due to the presence of civilians. The solution required a precision shot through a window barely 18 inches wide at a distance of nearly 600 yards, with innocent people in the same room as the target. The margin for error was essentially zero, and the psychological pressure was immense. Maria spent over an hour studying the target area, calculating wind patterns, measuring distances, and preparing for a shot that would have to be perfect on the first attempt. When the moment came, Maria's breathing slowed to the rhythm her grandfather had taught her decades earlier. The world around her seemed to fade away until there was nothing but her, the rifle, and the target. The trigger press was smooth and deliberate, the rifle's recoil felt but not noticed, and through her scope, she watched as the target dropped. While everyone else in the room remained unharmed, the mission commander's debrief was effusive in its praise, calling Maria's shot a work of art and recommending her for commendation. But for Maria, the satisfaction came not from the accolades, but from the knowledge that her skills had protected innocent lives while achieving the mission objective. These deployments and their successes had established Maria as one of the premier marksmen in the entire military, but they had also taken their toll. 12 years of service, multiple combat deployments, and the constant pressure of life and death decision-making had left her physically and emotionally exhausted. The decision to leave the military hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. For her own well-being and for the family she hoped to start, the transition from military to civilian life had been challenging for Maria in ways she hadn't expected. The structure, purpose, and camaraderie of military service were difficult to replace, and she found herself struggling to find meaning in civilian employment opportunities that seemed trivial compared to the work she had been doing. She had tried several job security consulting, law enforcement training, even a brief stint as a firearms instructor at a private academy, but nothing felt quite right. That it was during this period of uncertainty that Maria decided to pursue a degree in criminal justice, hoping that education might open doors to a career that would allow her to continue serving others in a meaningful way. The GI Bill provided financial support, and the academic environment offered structure and goals that helped fill the void left by her military service. Her professors quickly recognized her unique background and experience, often calling upon her to provide real-world perspective on theoretical concepts. During discussions about tactical operations, crisis management, and the use of force, Maria's insights were invaluable, drawing from years of practical experience that most students could only imagine. It was also during her college years that Maria met David, a fellow veteran who was studying to become a counselor specializing in PTSD treatment. Their shared military background created an immediate connection, and their relationship developed into something deeper as they supported each other through the challenges of readjusting to civilian life. David understood the sleepless nights, the hypervigilance, and the difficulty of explaining military experiences to people who had never served. After graduating with honors, Maria accepted a position with a federal law enforcement agency, where her military background and specialized skills were highly valued. The work was challenging and meaningful, involving counterterrorism operations and high-risk arrests that required the same precision and judgment she had developed during her military career. For 3 years, she excelled in this role, earning the respect of her colleagues and superiors, while building a reputation as someone who could be counted on in the most difficult situations. Her marksmanship skills were legendary within the agency, and she was often called upon to provide training and expertise on complex tactical situations. But as much as she valued her work, Maria began to feel a pull toward something different. David had proposed, and they were planning a wedding and talking about starting a family. The demands of federal law enforcement, with its irregular hours and dangerous assignments, didn't align with the life they wanted to build together. After much consideration and discussion with David, Maria made the difficult decision to leave federal service and pursue a career that would allow for better work-life balance while still utilizing her skills and experience. She accepted a position as a civilian contractor, providing training and consultation services to various military and law enforcement agencies. This new role allowed her to travel less frequently, maintain more regular hours, and begin building the family life she and David had dreamed of. They were married in a small ceremony attended by friends and family, including several of Maria's former military colleagues who had become lifelong friends. The contracting work was fulfilling in its own way, allowing Maria to pass on her knowledge and experience to a new generation of service members and law enforcement officers. She developed training programs, conducted workshops, and provided expert consultation on complex tactical situations. Her reputation in this field grew steadily, and she found herself in high demand as agencies sought out her expertise. However, the work was also emotionally demanding in different ways. Training young soldiers and officers meant confronting the reality that some of them would face the same life-and-death situations she had experienced. She felt a deep responsibility to prepare them as thoroughly as possible, knowing that the skills she taught might one day save their lives or the lives of their colleagues. It was during one of these training assignments at a military base in Georgia that Maria first encountered signs that her reputation had reached higher levels of command than she had realized. A colonel she had never met approached her after a training session and mentioned that her name had come up in discussions at the Pentagon regarding advanced marksmanship programs. "Santos," he had said, "there are people in very high places who know exactly who you are and what you're capable of. Your reputation precedes you wherever you go in military circles." The comment had been flattering but also somewhat unsettling, as Maria preferred to let her work speak for itself rather than relying on reputation. This conversation proved to be prophetic, as Maria's name had indeed been circulating in military leadership circles. Her combination of combat experience, training expertise, and proven track record made her a valuable asset, even as a civilian contractor. Various agencies and military units sought her services, and her calendar remained full with training assignments and consultation requests. Despite the professional success, Maria found herself occasionally missing the camaraderie and sense of purpose that came with full-time military service. The contractor lifestyle offered more flexibility and better compensation, but it lacked the deep bonds and shared mission that had defined her military years. These feelings came to a head during a particularly challenging training assignment where she was working with a unit preparing for deployment. Watching these young soldiers prepare for the same experiences she had lived through brought back a flood of memories and emotions. That evening, she called David and admitted that she was struggling with her decision to leave military service. I know this work is important, she told him, but sometimes I feel like I'm on the outside looking in. These soldiers are preparing to face things that I've experienced, but I won't be there with them when it matters most. David understood her feelings better than anyone else could. He had experienced similar struggles during his own transition, from military to civilian life, and he knew that the sense of purpose and belonging that came with military service was difficult to replace. "Maria," he had said, "you're still serving, just in a different way. The skills you're teaching these soldiers could save their lives and the lives of their brothers and sisters in arms. That's not a small thing." His words provided comfort. But Maria continued to wrestle with her identity as a civilian contractor rather than an active duty service member. The distinction might have seemed insignificant to outsiders, but to Maria, it represented a fundamental shift in how she saw herself and her role in. These internal conflicts were compounded by external challenges that came with being a woman in predominantly male military and law enforcement environments. Despite her proven track record and undeniable expertise, Maria occasionally encountered skepticism or condescension from individuals who couldn't look past gender stereotypes. These incidents were frustrating, but also served to strengthen her resolve to prove herself through performance rather than words. One particularly memorable incident occurred during a training session at a Marine Corps base, where a young lieutenant questioned her qualifications in front of his entire platoon. Rather than responding with anger or defensiveness, Maria simply asked him to join her on the firing line. Using the same rifle he carried, she proceeded to demonstrate shooting techniques that left the entire platoon speechless with admiration. The lieutenant, to his credit, publicly apologized and asked if he could schedule additional training sessions with her. These experiences taught Maria valuable lessons about leadership, professionalism, and the importance of letting actions speak louder than words. She developed a reputation not just for marksmanship excellence, but for the grace and dignity with which she handled challenging situations. As her contracting career progressed, Maria began to specialize in training programs for special operations units and elite law enforcement teams. These assignments were more technically demanding and required higher security clearances, but they also provided opportunities to work with the most skilled and professional personnel in their respective fields. Working with these elite units reminded Maria of what she had loved most about military service: the pursuit of excellence, the attention to detail, and the understanding that lives depended on doing things right the first time. These professionals shared her commitment to perfection and her understanding that there was no room for good enough when human lives were at stake. It was during one of these elite training assignments that Maria received an unexpected phone call that would change the trajectory of her life once again. The caller identified himself as Colonel Michael Chun, aide to Brigadier General Robert Harrison. Maria recognized the general's name from her military service, but couldn't immediately place why it seemed familiar. "Miss Santos," Colonel Chun said, "General Harrison would like to meet with you regarding a matter of mutual interest. Would you be available for a meeting at the Pentagon next week?" The formal tone and official nature of the request immediately put Maria on alert. In her experience, generals didn't request meetings with civilian contractors unless something significant was happening. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday, giving Maria several days to research General Harrison and try to understand what might have prompted his interest in her. What she discovered was impressive. Harrison was widely respected throughout the military, known for his strategic thinking, combat leadership, and commitment to developing innovative training programs. More intriguingly, Maria learned that General Harrison had been instrumental in developing several advanced marksmanship programs and had a particular interest in precision shooting applications for special operations. His background suggested that this meeting would likely involve some kind of training or consultation opportunity, but Maria couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than that. The days leading up to the meeting were filled with anticipation. and speculation. David encouraged her to approach it with an open mind, suggesting that it might be exactly the kind of opportunity she had been looking for to re-engage with military service in a meaningful way. "Maybe this is the universe's way of bringing you back to where you belong," he suggested during one of their evening walks. "You've been saying that something feels missing from your current work. Maybe this general sees something in you that you haven't fully recognized yourself." Maria appreciated David's optimism, but she tried to maintain realistic expectations. Pentagon meetings could involve anything from routine consultation requests to complex policy discussions, and she didn't want to build up unrealistic hopes about what the general might want to discuss. Nevertheless, she spent considerable time preparing for the meeting, reviewing her training methodologies, updating her portfolio of accomplishments, and researching current military marksmanship programs to ensure she could contribute meaningfully to whatever discussion General Harrison had in mind. The night before the meeting, Maria stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the civilian business attire she had chosen for the occasion. Looking at her reflection, she noticed something that surprised her. Despite her civilian clothes and the years that had passed since she wore a military uniform, she still carried herself with the bearing and confidence of a soldier. "Once a soldier, always a soldier," she murmured to herself, remembering something her first drill sergeant had told her during basic training. At the time, it had seemed like just another military saying, but now she understood its deeper meaning. Military service wasn't just a job or a career. It was a fundamental part of who she was, regardless of what uniform she wore or what title appeared on her business cards. This realization helped settle her nerves about the upcoming meeting. Whatever General Harrison wanted to discuss, she would approach it as a soldier prepared, professional, and ready to serve in whatever capacity might be needed. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot too. U.S. Now back to the story. The Pentagon was every bit as imposing as Maria had expected, its massive concrete walls and labyrinthine corridors serving as a physical manifestation of American military power. Despite having visited the building several times during her contracting career, Maria still felt a sense of awe walking through its halls. Passing offices where decisions affecting global security were made daily. Colonel Chun met her at the security checkpoint, a professional officer in his mid-40s whose crisp uniform and confident demeanor immediately conveyed competence and authority. "Miss Santos," he greeted her with a firm handshake, "thank you for making time for this meeting. General Harrison is looking forward to speaking with you." As they walked through the corridors toward the general's office, Colonel Chun provided background information that helped Maria understand the context for the meeting. "The general has been following your career for several years," he explained. "Your reputation in marksmanship training circles is exceptional, and your military record speaks for itself. He's particularly interested in some innovative training approaches you've developed." The comment surprised Maria, as she hadn't realized her work had gained attention at such high levels. Her training programs had been well received by the units she worked with, but she had assumed that feedback remained within those organizations rather than reaching general officer level. Harrison's office was smaller than Maria had expected, but reflected the man's reputation for professionalism and attention to detail. Awards, commendations, and photographs from his long career covered the walls, telling the story of a distinguished military leader who had served in multiple theaters and earned the respect of subordinates and superiors alike. The general himself was in his late 50s, with graying hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent considerable time in the field rather than behind a desk. When he stood to greet Maria, his bearing immediately conveyed the quiet confidence that came from decades of successful leadership in challenging circumstances. "Staff Sergeant Santos," he said, extending his hand with a smile that seemed both warm and appraising. "Or I suppose it's Miss Santos now. Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." The use of her former military rank immediately put Maria at ease while also signaling that General Harrison viewed her through the lens of her military service rather than her current civilian status. It was a subtle but important distinction that suggested this meeting involved more than routine contracting opportunities. "General," Maria replied, settling into the chair across from his desk, "it's an honor to meet you. Colonel Chun mentioned that you've been following my work, though I have to admit I'm curious about what specifically brought me to your attention." General Harrison leaned back in his chair, his expression becoming more serious. "Maria, may I call you Maria? Your name has come up repeatedly in discussions about advanced marksmanship training and special operations support. But more than that, your military record caught my attention several years ago, and I've been tracking your career ever since." He opened a file folder on his desk, revealing what Maria recognized as her complete military personnel record along with additional documents she couldn't immediately identify. "Your performance during your deployments was exceptional, particularly your precision shooting under combat conditions. The after-action reports from your operations read like case studies in marksmanship excellence." Maria felt a mix of pride and curiosity about where this conversation was leading. "Thank you, sir. I was fortunate to serve with outstanding units and had excellent training throughout my—" "Fortunate, perhaps," the general replied, "but fortune doesn't account for the consistency of your performance or the innovation you've brought to training programs since leaving active duty. Your approach to marksmanship instruction has been revolutionary in several ways, combining traditional military precision with modern psychological understanding of performance under stress." The general pulled out several documents from the file, spreading them across his desk. "These are feedback reports from units you've trained over the past 3 years. Without exception, they show significant improvements in accuracy, consistency, and performance under pressure. More importantly, they show reduced training time required to achieve expert-level proficiency." Maria studied the documents, recognizing some of the units she had worked with, but surprised by the detailed analysis of her training outcomes. "I wasn't aware that anyone was conducting such comprehensive assessments of my programs," she admitted. "We assess everything that might give our forces an advantage," General Harrison replied. "Your methods have consistently produced results that exceed traditional training approaches, and that's exactly the kind of innovation we need to stay ahead of our adversaries." The general stood and walked to a map on his wall showing global military installations and operational areas. "Maria, I'm going to be direct with you. We have a problem that requires someone with your unique combination of skills, experience, and proven track record. It's not a typical contracting opportunity, and it's not something we can solve with conventional approaches." Maria felt her pulse quicken as she realized this meeting was leading somewhere she hadn't anticipated. "What kind of problem, sir?" General Harrison turned back to face her, his expression grave. "We have a situation developing that requires immediate attention from someone with your specific expertise. It involves training a specialized unit for an operation that will demand absolute precision under extreme conditions. The margin for error is 0, and failure could have strategic implications." The weight of his words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Maria had participated in many sensitive operations during her military career, but something about the general's tone suggested this was different, more critical, and more complex than anything she had previously encountered. "Sir," Maria said carefully, "I'm honored by your confidence, but I should mention that I'm no longer cleared for classified operations. My security clearance lapsed when I transitioned to civilian contracting." General Harrison smiled for the first time since the conversation had turned serious. "Maria, if you're willing to consider what I'm about to propose, the security clearance will be the least of our concerns. We can have you cleared at any level necessary within 48 hours. The implications of General Harrison's statement hit Maria immediately. Security clearances at the highest levels typically took months to process, even for individuals with exemplary backgrounds. The fact that the general could guarantee clearance within 48 hours suggested that this operation had priority at the very highest levels of government and military command. "General," Maria said, choosing her words carefully, "before we continue, I think I should mention that I'm married now, and my husband and I are planning to start a family. Any commitment I make would need to account for those responsibilities." General Harrison nodded approvingly. "I respect that, Maria, and it actually reinforces why you're the right person for this assignment. Someone with personal stakes in the future tends to be more careful and more committed to getting things right. We're not asking you to abandon your personal life, quite the opposite. This assignment, if you accept it, would help ensure that your family has a secure future to look forward to." The general returned to his desk and pulled out another document. This one bearing classifications that Maria recognized as being at the highest levels of military secrecy. "What I'm about to share with you cannot leave this room, regardless of whether you accept our proposal. Are you comfortable proceeding under those conditions?" Maria considered the question seriously. Once she heard classified information, she would be bound by federal law to protect it, regardless of her personal feelings about any proposed assignment. However, her curiosity and sense of duty compelled her to learn more about what the general had in mind. "Yes, sir. I understand the obligations involved." General Harrison opened the classified document and began to speak in the measured tones of someone accustomed to briefing sensitive operations. "3 months ago, we received intelligence indicating that a hostile nation has developed an advanced weapons system that poses a significant threat to our national security. Traditional military responses to this threat would be either ineffective or would risk escalating into a larger conflict." He paused, allowing the gravity of the situation to settle before continuing. "The only viable solution is a precision operation that would neutralize this threat without creating the collateral damage or political complications that would result from conventional military action. This operation requires marksmanship skills at a level that exceeds anything in our current operational doctrine." Maria felt her breath catch as she began to understand what the general was suggesting. "Sir, are you asking me to participate in a direct action operation?" "Not exactly," General Harrison replied. "We're asking you to train a very small, very elite team for this operation. The individuals selected for this mission are already among the best marksmen in our military, but they need to be elevated to a level of precision that has never been operationally required before. Traditional training methods won't be sufficient." The general stood and walked to a secure safe in the corner of his office, retrieving additional documents that he placed on the desk between them. "The target parameters for this operation are unlike anything our forces have previously attempted. The shots required must be accurate to within millimeters at distances exceeding anything in our training protocols, under environmental conditions that will challenge every aspect of marksmanship fundamentals." Maria studied the technical specifications provided in the documents, her experienced eye immediately recognizing the extraordinary difficulty of what was being proposed. The required precision was beyond what most people would consider humanly possible, and the environmental factors altitude, temperature, wind conditions, and limited visibility would make the shots exponentially more challenging. "General," she said after several minutes of analysis, "these parameters are ambitious. I'm not sure it's possible to train anyone to achieve this level of precision under these conditions." "That's exactly why we need you," General Harrison replied. "Every other expert we've consulted has given us the same assessment. But your training methods have consistently achieved results that other instructors considered impossible. If anyone can prepare a team for this operation, it's you." The compliment was flattering, but Maria remained focused on the technical challenges involved. How much time would we have for training? 6 weeks, the general answered. The operation must be conducted within a specific window of opportunity, and that window opens in 7 weeks. The timeline was extraordinarily compressed, even by military standards. Most advanced marksmanship training programs required months to achieve significant improvements, and what the general was proposing would require achieving perfection in less than half that time. "Sir, 6 weeks is challenging," Maria said diplomatically. "To achieve this level of precision, we would need perfect conditions, unlimited ammunition, and trainees who are already at the absolute peak of their abilities. You'll have all of that and more," General Harrison assured her. "This operation has been designated as a national security priority at the highest levels. Any resource you need, personnel, equipment, facilities, time will be made available immediately. Cost is not a consideration." Maria felt the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. This was clearly an opportunity to contribute to something of critical importance to national security, but it was also a massive responsibility that would affect not just her own life, but potentially the lives of the team members she would be training. "General, I need to discuss this with my husband before I can give you an answer. This kind of commitment would affect both of our lives significantly." "Of course," General Harrison replied. "However, I need to emphasize that time is critical. We need your decision within 24 hours to maintain our operational timeline, and Maria... He paused, his expression becoming even more serious. "Your husband cannot know any operational details, but you can tell him that this assignment involves training for a mission of critical national importance." The general stood, signaling that the meeting was concluding. "Maria, I want you to know that asking you to take on this responsibility isn't a decision we've made lightly. Your country needs your skills, your experience, and your expertise. I hope you'll consider accepting this." The drive home from the Pentagon felt longer than usual, Maria's mind racing with the implications of General Harrison's proposal. The classified nature of the conversation meant she couldn't discuss specific details with David, but she could share the basic framework, a high-priority training assignment that would require her full commitment for 6 weeks and would likely involve some level of personal risk. David was waiting for her when she arrived home, having prepared her favorite dinner and opened a bottle of wine, his way of showing support regardless of what decision she ultimately made. His understanding and patience had been constants throughout their relationship, but Maria knew that what she was about to ask of him would test those qualities in new ways. "How did it go?" he asked as she settled onto the couch beside him, accepting the glass of wine he offered. Maria took a sip, using the moment to organize her thoughts. "It's complicated," she began. "The general offered me an assignment that would be unlike anything I've done before. It's important, critically important, but it would mean being away for at least 6 weeks, possibly longer." David studied her face, reading the conflict and uncertainty she was trying to hide. "But you want to do it," he said. It wasn't a question. He knew her well enough to see the spark of excitement and purpose that had been missing from her eyes for months. Maria nodded slowly. "I think I do." The general made it clear that this assignment could make a real difference, not just for the military, but for national security. "It's the kind of work I've been missing, the kind of mission that gives everything else meaning." "Then you should do it," David said without hesitation. "Maria, I've watched you struggle with finding your place since you left the military. You're brilliant at what you do, but you've been holding back, playing it safe. This sounds like exactly what you need to feel like yourself again." His immediate support surprised her. She had expected questions, concerns, maybe even resistance to the idea of her taking on such a demanding and potentially dangerous assignment. Instead, David was encouraging her to embrace the opportunity. "But what about our plans?" she asked. "We've been talking about starting a family, buying a house. building a more stable life together. David reached over and took her hand. Those plans aren't going anywhere. 6 weeks is nothing compared to the rest of our lives together. And honestly, I'd rather have you take on this assignment and come back fulfilled and excited about your work than watch you continue to feel like something's missing. That night, Maria lay awake long after David had fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling and weighing her decision. The technical challenges of the assignment were daunting, but they were also exactly the kind of problem she had always excelled at solving. The compressed timeline would be stressful, but she had worked under similar pressure during her military deployments. What concerned her most was the responsibility she would be taking on. The lives of the team members she would be training would depend on her ability to prepare them for what sounded like an extraordinarily difficult mission. If she failed to adequately prepare them, if her training methods proved insufficient for the challenges they would face, people could die. But as she considered this responsibility, Maria also recognized that refusing the assignment wouldn't eliminate the risk. It would simply mean that someone else would attempt to prepare the team, possibly with less suitable methods or experience. General Harrison had made it clear that she was their first choice, which suggested that other options had already been considered and found wanting. By morning, her decision was made. She called Colonel Chun's office at 0800 hours sharp and informed him that she would accept the assignment. Within 2 hours, she received a detailed briefing packet along with instructions to report to a classified facility in Virginia. The following Monday. The weekend passed quickly as Maria made arrangements for her extended absence. She contacted her existing clients to postpone or reassign scheduled training sessions, organized her personal affairs, and spent quality time with David before beginning what would likely be the most challenging assignment of her career. David drove her to the classified facility on Monday morning, neither of them speaking much during the journey. Both understood that this assignment represented a turning point, not just in Maria's career, but in their relationship. They were entering a phase where her work would once again take precedence over their personal life, at least temporarily. Facility itself was unremarkable from the outside, a collection of low buildings, surrounded by high fences and discreet security measures. But Maria's experienced eye immediately recognized the telltale signs of a highly classified installation: the subtle positioning of guard posts, the sophisticated electronic surveillance equipment, and the careful design that provided both security and operational functionality. Colonel Chun met her at the main gate, accompanied by a woman in civilian clothes who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a psychologist specializing in performance under extreme stress. The inclusion of a psychologist in the initial briefing team confirmed Maria's suspicion that this assignment would push both her and her trainees to their absolute limits. "Maria," Colonel Chun said as they walked toward the main building, "I want to prepare you for what you're about to see. The team selected for this mission represents the absolute best marksmen from across all military branches. Each of them has combat experience and has demonstrated exceptional skill under pressure. However, they're also accustomed to being the best at what they do, which may create some initial resistance to intensive retraining." Dr. Mitchell added, "We've conducted psychological profiles on all team members to ensure they can handle the stress of this training and the subsequent mission. However, we'll be monitoring everyone closely throughout the process. The pressure involved in this assignment could affect anyone unpredictably." As they entered the main building, Maria was struck by the quiet intensity of the environment. Personnel moved with purpose and spoke in hushed tones, creating an atmosphere that clearly communicated the serious nature of the work being conducted here. The initial briefing room was equipped with the latest technology, including secure communication systems and advanced presentation equipment. General Harrison was waiting, along with several other officers Maria didn't recognize, but whose bearing and insignia clearly identified them as senior leadership from various military branches. "Maria, General Harrison said, standing to greet her. "Welcome to Operation Precision Strike. Everything you'll see and hear from this point forward is classified at the highest levels. Are you ready to begin?" Maria straightened her shoulders, feeling the familiar sensation of stepping into a role that demanded her absolute best. "Yes, sir, I'm ready." The comprehensive briefing that followed lasted nearly 4 hours and left Maria with a profound understanding of both the complexity and the critical importance of the mission she had been asked to support. The target was a weapons facility in a hostile nation that posed an imminent threat to American allies and interests. Traditional military strikes were not feasible due to the facility's location in a densely populated area and the political ramifications of overt military action. The solution required a precision strike that would neutralize the threat without causing collateral damage or leaving evidence of American involvement. This meant shots that had to be accurate to within millimeters at distances exceeding 1,200 yards. Under conditions that included extreme altitude, variable wind patterns, and limited windows of opportunity. The team selected for this mission consisted of 5 individuals, each representing the pinnacle of marksmanship capability within their respective military branches. There was Staff Sergeant James Rodriguez from the Army's Elite Sniper Program, Petty Officer First Class Amanda Chun from the Navy SEALs, Master Sergeant Michael Thompson from the Air Force Special Operations Command, Gunnery Sergeant Lisa Park from the Marine Corps, and Staff Sergeant David Johnson from the Army Rangers. When Maria first met the team, she immediately sensed both their exceptional capabilities and their skepticism about needing additional training. These were individuals accustomed to being the best at what they did, and the suggestion that they required remedial instruction was clearly challenging their professional pride. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maria began, addressing the team in the facility's main training room, "I know you're wondering why you're here. Each of you has already proven yourselves as expert marksmen under combat conditions. What we're going to work on over the next 6 weeks isn't about questioning your existing skills. It's about elevating them to a level that current military doctrine considers impossible." She gestured to a series of targets set up at the far end of the room, each marked with precise measurements and technical specifications. "The shots required for your upcoming mission exceed anything in current training protocols. We're going to be working at distances, under conditions, and with precision requirements that will push every one of us beyond what we thought was achievable." Staff Sergeant Rodriguez raised his hand. "Ma'am, with respect, we've all been shooting at extended ranges throughout our careers. What makes this different?" Maria had expected this question and had prepared a demonstration that would immediately illustrate the difference between their current capabilities and what the mission would require. She led the team to an indoor range where she had prepared a specialized target system that simulated the exact conditions they would face during the operation. "Sergeant Rodriguez," she said, "I'd like you to take a shot at the target marked A using the rifle you're most comfortable with. This represents the kind of shot you'll need to make during the mission." Rodriguez approached the firing line with confidence, selecting a rifle he had used extensively during previous deployments. The target was positioned at 800 yards, challenging, but well within his demonstrated capabilities. He settled into position, controlled his breathing, and squeezed the trigger with the smooth precision that had made him one of the Army's premier snipers. The shot was excellent, by any normal standard, striking within the center ring of the target. However, when Maria displayed the results on a large monitor, the team could see that the impact point was nearly 3 inches away from the exact center, a margin of error that would have been acceptable for any conventional military operation, but was far outside the tolerances required for their upcoming mission. "That was an outstanding shot by traditional standards," Maria said. "But the mission parameters require accuracy within a half-inch margin at twice that distance. We're going to work together to develop the skills and techniques necessary to achieve that level of precision consistently." The demonstration had the desired effect. The team members' expressions shifted from skepticism to intense focus as they began to comprehend the magnitude of the challenge ahead. These were professional warriors who understood that their success depended on mastering whatever skills the mission required, regardless of their personal feelings about additional training. Over the following days, Maria implemented a training regimen that was unlike anything the team had previously experienced. Rather than focusing solely on traditional marksmanship fundamentals, she incorporated elements of sports psychology, advanced ballistics calculation, environmental adaptation techniques, and stress management protocols. Each day began with physical conditioning designed not for general fitness, but specifically to enhance the stability and endurance required for precision shooting under adverse conditions. This was followed by extensive work on breathing techniques that went far beyond military standards, incorporating methods borrowed from competitive shooting, yoga, and meditation practices. The technical aspects of the training were equally intensive. Maria worked with each team member to develop personalized shooting techniques that maximize their individual strengths, while addressing specific weaknesses. She introduced advanced ballistics calculations that accounted for variables most military training ignored, including minute atmospheric pressure changes, temperature variations, and even the rotation of the Earth. Dr. Mitchell worked alongside Maria to address the psychological aspects of the challenge. The pressure of knowing that mission success depended on achieving unprecedented levels of precision was taking a toll on all team members, manifesting in different ways for each individual. Some became overly focused on technical perfection, at the expense of intuitive shooting, while others struggled with confidence issues that affected their natural abilities. The human mind is both your greatest asset and your biggest obstacle in this kind of shooting, Dr. Mitchell explained during one of her sessions with the team. We need to train your minds to function optimally under the specific pressures you'll face during the mission. By the end of the first week, Maria had established baselines for each team members' capabilities and had identified the specific areas where each needed improvement. The progress was measurable but slow, and she found herself questioning whether 6 weeks would be sufficient to achieve the required level of performance. It was during this period of doubt that Maria experienced a breakthrough that would define the remainder of the training program. Working late one evening with Staff Sergeant Johnson, who had been struggling with consistency at extreme ranges, she observed something that changed her understanding of what was possible. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during what had been a particularly frustrating training session. Staff Sergeant Johnson had been consistently missing targets by margins that, while small by normal standards, were unacceptable for the mission requirements. His technique was flawless, his equipment was perfectly calibrated, and his physical conditioning was excellent, yet something was preventing him from achieving the precision necessary. Maria had been working with Johnson for 3 hours, making minute adjustments to his position, breathing technique, and trigger control, but the results remained inconsistent. Both of them were exhausted and frustrated when Maria made a decision that went against conventional training wisdom. "David," she said, using his first name instead of his rank, "I want you to stop thinking about the target for a moment. Instead, I want you to tell me about why you became a marksman in the first place." Johnson looked puzzled by the question but settled back from his rifle. "Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. When you first learned to shoot, before the military, before all the technical training, what drew you to it? What did it feel like when everything clicked and you knew the shot was going to be perfect?" Johnson considered the question for several moments before responding. "I grew up hunting with my father in Montana. There was this one morning when I was about 12 years old, and we were tracking an elk through heavy timber. When we finally found him, he was standing on a ridge about 300 yards away, and my father told me I could take the shot." His voice grew quieter as he continued. "I remember everything becoming perfectly still, the wind, my breathing, even my heartbeat seemed to slow down. It wasn't about the technical aspects of shooting. It was about becoming part of the moment, understanding that everything in the universe had aligned to create this one perfect opportunity. Maria nodded, recognizing something in Johnson's description that resonated with her own experiences. "What happened when you took that shot?" "It was perfect," Johnson said simply. "Not just accurate, perfect. The bullet went exactly where I intended, but more than that, I knew it was going to be perfect from the moment I squeezed the trigger. Everything felt connected, like the rifle was just an extension of my intention." "That's exactly what we need to find again," Maria said excitedly. "All the technical training, all the calculations and adjustments, they're important, but they're just tools. What made that shot perfect was the connection between your mind, your body, and your intention." She had Johnson return to the firing line, but instead of focusing on technical adjustments, she guided him through a visualization exercise that helped him reconnect with the feeling he had described from his childhood hunting experience. The results were immediate and dramatic. His next 10 shots created a group so tight it could be covered by a quarter at 1,000 yards, a level of precision that exceeded even the mission requirements. More importantly, Johnson's confidence was transformed. He had rediscovered the intuitive connection that had made him a natural marksman before military training, had overlaid technical complexity on top of his innate abilities. Word of this breakthrough spread quickly through the team, and Maria began incorporating similar psychological and visualization techniques into everyone's training. She worked with each team member to identify their personal connection to marksmanship excellence, helping them rediscover the mental state that had originally drawn them to precision shooting. For Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, it was the memory of target shooting with his grandfather, an immigrant who had taught him that precision was a form of respect for the weapon, for the target, and for the opportunity to demonstrate skill. For Petty Officer Chen, it was the Zen-like focus she had developed through martial arts training, where perfect technique emerged from the absence of conscious thought rather than its presence. Master Sergeant Thompson connected with memories of his father, an Air Force pilot who had taught him that precision in any endeavor required understanding the harmony between human intention and mechanical capability. Gunnery Sergeant Park rediscovered her connection through memories of competitive shooting in high school, where success had come from trusting her instincts rather than overthinking every. As each team member reconnected with their personal relationship to marksmanship excellence, their performance began to improve dramatically. But more than that, they began to function as a cohesive unit, sharing insights and supporting each other through the challenging aspects of the training. Dr. Mitchell was fascinated by the other psychological transformation taking place within the team. "What you've done," she told Maria during one of their evening debriefings, "is help them move beyond performance anxiety and reconnect with flow states that most people only experience occasionally. You've made it reproducible and sustainable." The training schedule intensified as the team's capabilities improved. Maria introduced environmental variables that simulated the exact conditions they would face during the mission, altitude chambers that replicated the thin air they would be breathing, wind machines that created the precise atmospheric conditions they would encounter, and lighting systems that mimicked the specific illumination levels they would be working under. Each simulation was designed not just to prepare them for the environmental challenges, but to build confidence in their ability to maintain precision under any conditions. The team learned to make rapid calculations for atmospheric variables, to adjust their technique for different elevations and temperatures, and to maintain focus despite physical discomfort and fatigue. By the 4th week of training, something remarkable had happened. The 5 individual marksmen had evolved into something greater than the sum of their parts. They had developed an almost telepathic understanding of each other's capabilities and limitations, and they could provide mutual support and encouragement. That enhanced everyone's performance. Maria watched this transformation with a mixture of pride and growing concern. The team was exceeding all expectations and seemed well prepared for the technical aspects of their mission. However, she was beginning to understand that the real challenge wouldn't be the shooting itself. It would be maintaining this level of performance under the psychological pressure of knowing that lives, possibly including their own, depended on their success. The final 2 weeks of training took on an intensity that bordered on obsession. Every member of the team understood that they were approaching something unprecedented in military marksmanship, and the weight of that responsibility drove them to push beyond what any of them had previously thought possible. Maria found herself working 18-hour days, constantly analyzing performance data, adjusting training protocols, and providing individual coaching to address the subtle differences in how each team member responded to pressure. The training facility had been transformed into a comprehensive simulation environment that replicated every aspect of the the operational conditions they would face. Advanced weather systems created precise atmospheric conditions. Elevation chambers simulated the exact altitude they would be operating at, and sophisticated target systems provided real-time feedback on shot placement with millimeter accuracy. General Harrison visited the facility during the 5th week, accompanied by a small group of senior officers who observed the team's performance with expressions that ranged from amazement to disbelief. The level of precision they witnessed was beyond anything in current military doctrine, and several of the observers were openly skeptical that such accuracy could be maintained under real-world conditions. "Maria," General Harrison said after watching the team complete a particularly challenging shooting sequence, "what you've accomplished here exceeds our most optimistic projections. The question now is whether they can perform at this level when it matters most." It was a question that had been weighing heavily on Maria's mind as well. Training environment performance, no matter how realistic the simulations, was fundamentally different from operational performance where real consequences existed for failure. The psychological pressure of knowing that mission success depended entirely on their shooting accuracy would test the team in ways that training couldn't fully replicate. To address this concern, Maria implemented a series of high-pressure scenarios designed to simulate the stress and consequences of the actual mission. Team members were required to maintain precision while dealing with simulated equipment failures, time pressure, and scenarios where missing the target would result in mission failure and potential loss of life for their teammates. These exercises revealed vulnerabilities that hadn't been apparent during routine training. Master Sergeant Thompson, who had been performing exceptionally well under normal conditions, showed decreased accuracy when faced with scenarios involving potential harm to civilian populations. Gunnery Sergeant Park, conversely, seemed to thrive under extreme pressure, actually improving her accuracy when the stakes were highest. Dr. Mitchell worked intensively with each team member to develop personalized stress management techniques that would allow them to maintain optimal performance, regardless of external pressure. Some responded well to meditation and visualization techniques, while others benefited from physical stress relief methods or cognitive reframing exercises. As the training program entered its final week, Maria made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Rather than continuing to intensify the training and add more pressure, she scaled back the daily schedule and focused on mental preparation and team cohesion. At this point, she explained to General Harrison, their technical skills are as refined as they're going to get. Adding more pressure or trying to squeeze out marginal improvements in accuracy could actually be counterproductive. What they need now is confidence in their abilities and trust in each other. The final days of training were spent on scenario rehearsals that emphasized teamwork and mutual support rather than individual performance. The team practiced communication protocols, backup procedures for equipment failures, and contingency plans for various operational complications, On the last day of training, Maria gathered the team for a final evaluation that would determine their readiness for the mission. Rather than a formal test, she created a scenario that combined all the technical challenges they would face with the psychological pressure of knowing that this was their final opportunity to demonstrate readiness. Results exceeded even Maria's expectations. Each team member performed flawlessly, not just in terms of shooting accuracy, but in their ability to support and encourage their teammates under pressure. They had evolved from 5 exceptional individual marksmen into a cohesive unit capable of achieving collectively what none of them could have accomplished alone. That evening, as the team celebrated the completion of their training, General Harrison pulled Maria aside for a private conversation. "Maria, what you've accomplished here will be studied and emulated for years to come. You've not only prepared this team for their mission, you've revolutionized our understanding of what's possible in precision marksmanship training." The compliment was gratifying, but Maria found herself focused on the future rather than past. Accomplishments. "General, I hope they'll never need to use these skills operationally. The level of precision we've achieved is extraordinary, but it comes with enormous responsibility and pressure." "I understand your concerns," General Harrison replied, "but I want you to know that the intelligence situation has evolved since we began this program. The threat we're addressing has become even more critical, and the mission these individuals are preparing for may be the only way to prevent a much larger conflict." The weight of this revelation settled over Maria as she realized that her work over the past 6 weeks had contributed to something far more significant than she had initially understood. The training program she had developed and the team she had prepared weren't just demonstrating advanced marksmanship techniques, they were potentially preventing a war. As the team departed for their operational assignment, each member personally thanked Maria for the transformation they had experienced. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez expressed it most eloquently. "Ma'am, you didn't just teach us to shoot better, you taught us to trust ourselves and each other in ways we never thought possible." Watching them leave, Maria felt a complex mixture of emotions: pride in what they had accomplished together, concern for their safety during the mission, and a profound sense of having contributed to something larger than herself. The expert marksman badge on her old uniform had represented individual achievement, but what she had accomplished here represented something far more significant: the ability to elevate others to levels of excellence they hadn't known they were capable of reaching. The following morning, Maria began the journey home to David, carrying with her the weight of what she had accomplished and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The 6 weeks had changed her in ways she was still discovering. She had pushed the boundaries of human performance in marksmanship training and had proven that with the right approach, even the most skilled individuals could transcend their perceived limitations. But more than the technical achievements, Maria had learned something profound about leadership and mentorship. The transformation she had witnessed in each team member went beyond improved shooting accuracy. It was about helping them discover capabilities they never knew they possessed and giving them confidence to perform under the most extreme pressure imaginable. As her plane lifted off from the Virginia airfield, Maria looked down at the training facility that had been her world for the past 6 weeks. Somewhere out there, 5 exceptional individuals were putting her training to the ultimate test. Their success or failure would not only determine the outcome of a critical national security operation but would also validate or challenge everything she had developed as a trainer and leader. The expert marksman badge that had started her journey so many years ago had led her to this moment. A civilian contractor who had been entrusted with preparing America's finest warriors for a mission that could change the course of history. Whatever happened next, Maria knew that she had given everything she had to ensure their success. The rest was up to them, their training, and the skills she had helped them discover within themselves. The 3 weeks following the team's departure were among the most difficult of Maria's life. The classified nature of their mission meant she had no way of knowing how they were performing, or even if they were safe. She returned home to David, who could see the toll that the intensive training period and subsequent uncertainty were taking on her. But the security restrictions prevented her from sharing the details that might have helped him understand her emotional state. During this period of waiting, Maria threw herself into routine activities, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy while her mind constantly returned to the 5 individuals she had trained and the critical mission they were attempting to complete. She resumed some of her civilian contracting work, but found it difficult to focus on routine training assignments when she knew that somewhere in the world, the techniques she had developed were being put to the ultimate test. David proved to be a source of strength during this challenging time, providing emotional support without asking questions he knew she couldn't answer. His understanding of military culture and the demands of classified operations allowed him to give her the space she needed while also ensuring she didn't isolate herself completely. "Whatever you accomplished during those 6 weeks," he told her one evening as they sat together on their back porch, "I can see that it was something extraordinary. You've been carrying the weight of it ever since you came home, and I want you to know that whatever happens, you did everything you could to prepare them." His words provided comfort, but Maria continued to struggle with the responsibility she felt for the team's success or failure. She had pushed them to achieve levels of precision that exceeded established military doctrine, but the ultimate test would be their ability to perform under operational conditions that no training environment could fully replicate. It was on a Tuesday morning in early autumn that Colonel Chun called with news that would change everything. "Maria," he said, his voice carrying both relief and admiration, "the mission was a complete success. Not only did the team achieve all operational objectives, but they did so with a level of precision that exceeded even our most optimistic projections." The wave of relief that washed over Maria was so intense that she had to sit down to prevent herself from collapsing. Months of worry, responsibility, and uncertainty lifted from her shoulders as she absorbed the news that her training had been successful, and that all team members had returned safely. "Colonel," she managed to say, "can you tell me anything about their performance?" "Without going into operational details," Colonel Chun replied, "I can tell you that the precision shots required for mission success were achieved on the first attempt, under conditions that were even more challenging than our training simulations had predicted. The team's performance was flawless, and their ability to adapt to unexpected variables demonstrated exactly the kind of excellence we had hoped to achieve." Over the following days, Maria received additional confirmation of the mission's success through official channels, though the details remained classified. What she did learn was that the threat the team had been trained to neutralize had been eliminated without collateral damage, without political complications, and without revealing American involvement. The precision operation had achieved everything it was designed to accomplish. More importantly, from Maria's perspective, all 5 team members had returned safely and had specifically requested that their appreciation be conveyed to her for the training that had made their success possible. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had reportedly told his debriefing officers that Maria Santos didn't just train us to shoot, she trained us to succeed. The success of the mission had broader implications that extended far beyond the immediate operational objectives. Military leadership at the highest levels recognized that Maria's training methods represented a breakthrough in precision marksmanship, instruction that could revolutionize how elite units were prepared for specialized operations. General Harrison called personally to congratulate her and to discuss the possibility of developing her techniques into a formal training program that could be implemented across multiple military branches. "Maria," he said, "what you've accomplished has proven that we've been operating well below our potential in precision marksmanship training. We'd like you to consider developing this into a permanent program." The offer was tempting and would represent a significant career opportunity. But Maria found herself hesitant to commit to such an intensive ongoing responsibility. The 6 weeks of training had been extraordinarily demanding, and she wasn't sure she wanted to make that level of commitment a permanent part of her life. "General," she replied, "I'm honored by the offer, but I need some time to consider what role I want to play going forward." The success of this mission was incredibly gratifying, but it also showed me how demanding this level of training can be, both for the instructor and for the students. General Harrison was understanding but persistent. "Take all the time you need to decide, but I want you to know that your country would benefit enormously from having these methods available for future critical operations. What you've developed isn't just an improved training technique, it's a strategic capability that could prevent conflicts and save lives." As Maria considered the general's offer, she realized that her perspective on her career and her purpose had fundamentally changed. The expert marksman badge she had earned years earlier had represented individual achievement and recognition, but the recent training program had shown her that her greatest contribution might lie in developing others rather than in personal performance. The success of the Precision Strike mission had demonstrated that the techniques she had developed could elevate exceptional marksmen to unprecedented levels of capability. More importantly, it had shown that the psychological and team-building aspects of her training were as crucial as the technical marksmanship instruction. This realization led Maria to begin developing a new vision for her career, one that would allow her to contribute to national security while also maintaining the work-life balance she and David had been seeking. Rather than accepting a full-time military position, she began exploring the possibility of establishing a specialized training institute that could provide advanced marksmanship instruction to military and law enforcement agencies on a contract basis. The concept for the Advanced Precision Training Institute began to take shape over several months of discussions with military leadership, conversations with David about their shared vision for the future, and careful consideration of how to structure an organization that could meet national security needs while maintaining operational flexibility. Maria's vision was ambitious, but practical. Create a civilian institution that could provide the highest level of precision marksmanship training available anywhere in the world, staffed by instructors who combined exceptional technical skills with proven ability to develop others. The institute would serve military special operations units, elite law enforcement teams, and selected allied forces, providing training that exceeded anything available through traditional military channels. The timing for such an institute was perfect. The success of the recent Precision Strike mission had generated enormous interest throughout the military and intelligence communities in advanced marksmanship capabilities. Multiple agencies were requesting training similar to what Maria had provided, but the military's existing training infrastructure wasn't equipped to deliver instruction at that level. General Harrison became a strong advocate for the institute concept, helping Maria navigate the complex approval processes required to establish a civilian training organization that would work with classified operations and sensitive military units. His support was crucial in obtaining the necessary security clearances, facility approvals, and operational authorities that would allow the institute to function effectively. The location selected for the institute was a former military installation in Virginia that provided the space, security, and infrastructure needed for advanced training operations. The facility included multiple shooting ranges configured for different types of precision training, environmental simulation chambers, and residential facilities that could accommodate intensive multi-week training programs. Recruiting instructors for the institute proved to be both challenging and rewarding. Maria was looking for individuals who combined exceptional marksmanship skills with proven teaching abilities and the psychological insight needed to help students achieve breakthrough performance levels. Many of the candidates came from military, special operations backgrounds, but she also recruited competitive shooters, law enforcement trainers, and even sports psychologists who brought different perspectives to the team. Dr. Sarah Mitchell agreed to join the Institute as Director of Performance Psychology, bringing her expertise in stress management and peak performance training. Her role would be crucial in ensuring that the psychological aspects of precision shooting received the same attention as technical marksmanship skills. The team from the successful precision strike mission became unofficial ambassadors for the Institute, sharing their experiences with other elite units and helping to generate interest in the advanced training methods Maria had developed. Their enthusiastic endorsements carried significant weight within military special operations communities, where word-of-mouth recommendations from proven operators were more valuable than any formal marketing efforts. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, who had completed his military service shortly after the mission, became the Institute's first full-time instructor, bringing both his exceptional shooting skills and his personal experience with Maria's training methods. His presence provided continuity between the original successful program and the Institute's expanding operations. The Institute's first official training program was conducted 6 months after the precision strike mission, with a class consisting of 12 students from various military special operations units. The program followed the same intensive 6-week format that had proven successful, but incorporated refinements and improvements based on lessons learned from the original training. The results exceeded even Maria's expectations. Every student achieved precision levels that would have been considered impossible under traditional training methods, and several set new records for accuracy at extreme ranges. More importantly, the psychological techniques and team-building methods proved to be transferable across different units and military branches. Word of the Institute's success spread rapidly through military and law enforcement communities, leading to a waiting list of agencies requesting training slots. Maria found herself in the position of having to carefully select which units to work with, balancing operational priorities with the Institute's capacity to deliver high-quality instruction. The Institute's reputation was further enhanced when several graduates successfully applied their training in real-world operations, achieving precision shots under challenging conditions that contributed to mission success and potentially saved lives. These operational successes validated Maria's training methods and demonstrated the strategic value of the Institute's capabilities. International interest in the Institute's programs began to develop as well, with allied military forces requesting access to training that could enhance their own special operations capabilities. These requests required careful coordination with State Department and military leadership to ensure that sensitive training methods were shared only with appropriate allies and under proper security conditions. As the Institute's first year of operations concluded, Maria reflected on how dramatically her career and life had changed since that day, when she had walked away from active military service. The expert marksman badge that had once represented the pinnacle of her individual achievement had evolved into something much larger, symbol of her ability to develop extraordinary capabilities in others and contribute to national security in ways she had never imagined possible. David had been supportive throughout the Institute's development, understanding that Maria had found her true calling in developing others rather than solely pursuing individual excellence. The Institute's structure allowed them to maintain their personal relationship while enabling Maria to contribute meaningfully to work that she found deeply fulfilling. The financial success of the Institute also provided security and opportunities that allowed Maria and David to begin building the family they had long planned. The Institute's civilian structure meant that Maria could maintain her career while also taking on the responsibilities of motherhood, creating a work-life integration that had been impossible during her military service. Looking toward the future, Maria began developing plans to expand the Institute's capabilities beyond precision marksmanship training. She envisioned programs that could address other specialized military and law enforcement needs, creating a comprehensive center of excellence for advanced tactical training. 5 years after the establishment of the PUF, Advanced Precision Training Institute, Maria stood before a graduating class of 24 students representing elite units from 6 different countries. The ceremony was taking place in the Institute's main auditorium, a facility that had been expanded twice to accommodate the growing scope of operations and the increasing international recognition of the Institute's capabilities. The students before her represented the evolution of everything she had worked to achieve. They came from diverse backgrounds: Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Marine Force Reconnaissance, FBI hostage rescue teams, and elite units from allied nations, but they shared a common transformation that Maria had witnessed in hundreds of graduates. Over the past 5 years, each had arrived at the Institute as an already exceptional marksman, confident in abilities that had been proven in combat and high-stakes operations. Over the course of their training, they had been challenged to transcend their existing limitations and achieve levels of precision that redefined their understanding of what was humanly possible. But more than technical skills, they had developed something far more valuable: the confidence that comes from knowing they could perform flawlessly when lives depended on their precision, and the understanding that excellence was not an individual achievement, but a collective responsibility shared with their teammates. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maria addressed the graduating class, "when you arrived here 6 weeks ago, you were already among the most skilled marksmen in your respective organizations. Today, you leave with capabilities that extend far beyond improved shooting accuracy. You have learned to transcend your individual limitations and to achieve excellence through mutual support and shared commitment to perfection." As she spoke, Maria's eyes found the small group of VIPs in the audience, including General Harrison, who had become not just a supporter of the Institute, but a close friend and advisor. His presence at every graduation ceremony reflected his continued belief in the strategic importance of the Institute's work and his personal pride in what Maria had accomplished. Also in the audience was the original team from the Precision Strike mission, now all civilians but united by their shared experience and their role as unofficial ambassadors for the Institute. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had become the Institute's chief instructor, while the others served as guest lecturers and mentors for new students. Their presence served as a reminder of where this journey had begun and how far it had evolved. David sat in the front row, holding their 18-month-old daughter Emma, who had become something of a mascot for the Institute staff. The sight of her family in the audience filled Maria with a deep sense of satisfaction that went beyond professional achievement. She had managed to build a career that contributed meaningfully to national security, while also creating the family life she and David had always wanted. The Institute's success had exceeded everyone's expectations, including Maria's own. What had begun as a solution to a single critical mission had evolved into a strategic capability that was reshaping how elite military and law enforcement units approached precision operations. The techniques developed at the Institute had been credited with the success of dozens of sensitive operations around the world, contributing to counterterrorism efforts, hostage rescue operations, and strategic missions that remained classified. More importantly, the Institute had become a center of innovation in training methodology, developing new approaches to human performance enhancement that were being applied far beyond marksmanship instruction. Sports psychologists, corporate trainers, and educational researchers regularly visited the Institute to study the techniques that consistently enabled individuals to transcend their perceived limitations. The psychological principles that Dr. Mitchell had helped develop at the Institute were now being taught at military leadership schools and were influencing how the armed forces approached training for high-stress operations across all specialties. The understanding that peak performance emerged from the integration of technical skill, mental preparation, and team cohesion had become a foundational principle in elite military training. As the graduation ceremony concluded and students received Their certificates. Maria reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The expert marksman badge she had earned so many years ago as a young soldier had been the beginning of a path she could never have imagined. Each step along that path, from combat deployments to civilian contracting to the intensive training mission that had changed everything, had prepared her for the role she now occupied. The success of the Institute had also brought recognition that both honored and humbled her. She had received numerous awards from military and civilian organizations, been featured in professional journals, and been invited to speak at conferences around the world. But the recognition that meant the most came from the graduates who returned to share stories of how their training had made a difference in their operational success and, in some cases, had saved their lives or the lives of their teammates. One such story had occurred just 6 months earlier, when a graduate of the Institute's program had been faced with a hostage situation that required a precision shot under conditions almost identical to those Maria had trained the original team for years before. The shot had been successful, the hostages had been saved, and the graduate had credited his institute training with giving him the confidence and skill needed to succeed under that pressure. Stories like these reminded Maria why the work of the Institute was so important, and why she had been willing to sacrifice the simpler life she and David had originally planned. The Institute represented more than a successful business or even a valuable military capability. It represented the actualization of human potential and the understanding that excellence was not a destination but a continuous journey of growth and development. As the reception following the graduation ceremony wound down, General Harrison approached Maria for a private conversation. "Maria," he said, "I wanted to let you know that there's been discussion at the highest levels about expanding the Institute's mission even further. There's interest in applying your training methodologies to other critical military specialties, combat medics, explosive ordnance disposal specialists, even pilot training." The suggestion was intriguing but also daunting. Maria had spent 5 years perfecting the Institute's marksmanship programs, and the idea of expanding into entirely new specialties would require significant resources and expertise she didn't currently possess. "General," she replied, "that's an interesting possibility, but I'm not sure we're ready for that kind of expansion. What we do well is precision marksmanship instruction, and I'm hesitant to dilute our focus by trying to be everything to everyone." "I understand your caution," General Harrison said, "but I want you to consider the broader implications of what you've developed here. The principles you've discovered about human performance enhancement, team development, and psychological preparation for high-stress situations are applicable far beyond shooting instruction. You've created something that could revolutionize military training across multiple disciplines." The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, with General Harrison outlining various possibilities for expanding the Institute's impact while Maria raised questions about resource requirements, staffing needs, and the challenges of maintaining quality standards across multiple program areas. As they talked, Maria realized that she was facing another pivotal decision in her career. The Institute had become successful beyond her wildest expectations, but success brought new opportunities and new responsibilities that could change the nature of what they had built. After General Harrison left, Maria found herself alone in the Institute's main training facility, surrounded by the targets, equipment, and technological systems that had enabled so many individuals to achieve extraordinary performance levels. The quiet space gave her an opportunity to reflect on the journey that had brought her here and to consider what the future might hold. The expert marksman badge from her military uniform was now framed on the wall of her office, not as a symbol of personal achievement, but as a reminder of where this remarkable journey had begun. That small piece of metal had represented individual excellence achieved through personal dedication and skill. What the Institute represented was something far more significant: the ability to systematically develop excellence in others and to create capabilities that could serve the broader national interest. Standing in that quiet space, Maria made a decision about the future. The Institute would continue to focus on what it did best, precision marksmanship training, but it would also begin carefully exploring how its methodologies could be adapted to other critical military specialties. The expansion would be gradual, methodical, and always focused on maintaining the quality standards that had made the Institute's reputation. But most importantly, the Institute would remain true to the principles that had guided its development. From the beginning, that human potential was far greater than most people realized, that excellence was achieved through the combination of individual preparation and team support, and that the ultimate purpose of any training program was to enable individuals to serve something larger than themselves. As Maria turned off the lights and prepared to go home to David and Emma, she felt the same sense of purpose and satisfaction that had driven her throughout her military career and her work as a civilian contractor. The path had been unexpected and often challenging, but it had led her to exactly where she belonged, helping others discover capabilities they never knew they possessed in contributing to causes that made the world a safer and better place. Story that had begun with a young soldier earning an expert marksman badge had evolved into something far more significant, a testament to the power of human potential, the importance of continuous learning and growth, and the understanding that true excellence was not a personal achievement, but a gift to be shared with others. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students to train, and new opportunities to make a difference. But tonight, Maria was content to know that she had found her calling and had built something that would continue to serve others long after her own career had ended. The Expert Marksman badge had been just the beginning of a journey that was far from over. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any uploads.